If clearing your dead brother's name meant admitting your own decision helped bury the truth, would you do it? Retired Navy SEAL Jonah Mercer faced that choice after finding a wounded German shepherd beneath a dead avalanche beacon. The key on Sable's collar belonged to Eli, the brother Jonah had publicly accused 6 winters earlier. Then, every warning signal in Grayson Pass began arriving exactly 7 seconds late. Someone had been using the valley's rescue network to close roads, ruin ranches, and hide a fatal mistake. Stay with us and tell us at the end whether protection without choice can still be called protection. If stories of loyalty and second chances matter to you, subscribe and help us reach 5,000 listeners. The avalanche beacon had been dead for 6 winters when it began transmitting from beneath the snow. Jonah Mercer heard the signal through the dashboard receiver as he climbed the West Service Road toward Grayson Pass. 3 short pulses, a pause, 2 more. Then the same pattern again, faint under the static. He took one hand off the wheel and turned the volume higher. The receiver should have been quiet. County maintenance had removed the upper relay from service after a lightning strike split its antenna and burned half the control board. Jonah knew because he had signed the retirement inspection himself back when the state still called him for difficult jobs, and before he had learned to refuse most invitations that required conversation. 3 pulses. Pause. 2. Not random interference. He slowed the old white utility truck and looked through the windshield. Fresh snow covered the narrow mountain road in a clean layer, broken only by his tire tracks. To his left, the slope rose sharply into lodgepole pine and dark granite. To his right, the ground fell away toward a valley washed in pale morning light. Wind moved loose powder across the road in thin ribbons. Jonah glanced at the cracked watch strapped over his glove. 7 minutes, slow as always. He had reset it twice since leaving home. Each time the second hand drifted back to the same delay within an hour. He should have replaced it. Instead, he kept wearing it because the watch had belonged to his brother Eli, and some failures were easier to carry when they had weight. The signal sounded again. Jonah stopped beside a bent marker post and checked the paper map clipped to the passenger seat. The retired beacon sat another half-mile above him near a narrow shelf of rock called Mercer Cut. No plow had serviced that stretch since the first storm. The county had hired him to inspect the surviving relays before the real winter arrived, not to revive equipment that should have been scrap. He put the truck in park. The engine idled roughly. A loose heat shield rattled beneath the cab. "Of course," he said. His voice sounded unfamiliar inside the truck. He had gone 3 days without using it. Jonah pulled on a stone-gray patrol coat, checked the medical pouch, clipped inside, and stepped into the cold. The air at 9,000 feet was thin enough to punish careless breathing. He moved slowly at first, allowing his lungs to settle, then crossed to the rear compartment and removed a collapsible probe, a short rescue shovel, and a handheld receiver. The signal strengthened when he pointed the device uphill. 3 pulses. Pause. 2. He climbed. Snow reached mid-calf in the shaded sections. Beneath it, the old service path was uneven, with frozen runoff and fallen branches. Jonah kept his weight centered, testing each step before committing. At 59, he still moved with the balance of a younger man, but the left knee never let him forget the years. It stiffened on steep ground and burned when the temperature dropped below 20. He ignored it until ignoring it became inefficient. The retired relay appeared through the trees 20 minutes later. Its steel mast leaned 2 degrees east cables, hanging stiff beneath a crust of ice. The maintenance box at its base had been ripped open. Snow filled the lower compartment. Jonah stopped 10 yards away. The signal was not coming from the mast. It came from below the access shelf, near a cluster of wind-packed boulders. He swept the handheld receiver side to side. The tone rose near the edge. Jonah moved closer and saw a shallow depression where the snow had collapsed around something warm. Then he saw the fur. Black at first, a narrow strip between white drifts. He set the receiver down and used the probe. The first push struck rock. The second sank 18 inches and touched something that moved. A low growl came from beneath the snow. Jonah froze. "Easy," he said. The growl weakened but did not stop. He removed snow with his gloved hands instead of the shovel. A pointed ear appeared, then an amber eye rimmed with frost. The German shepherd lay wedged between 2 rocks. Her body curled around a rectangular metal case. A steel cable looped her left hind leg and disappeared under the drift. The dog bared her teeth when Jonah reached toward the cable. He pulled his hand back. "All right?" The shepherd watched him. Her coat was sable rather than the cleaner black and tan pattern most people expected. Dark hair ran along her spine and shoulders fading to smoke gray around the neck and ribs. Snow had frozen into the longer fur beneath her chest. One ear stood high. The other had a small missing notch at the tip. She was not young. She was also not afraid of him in the ordinary way. Her eyes followed his hands, his stance, the angle of his shoulders. Working dog behavior. Trained to read intention before motion. Jonah sat back on his heels. The cable around her leg was not a snare. It was insulated signal wire, torn from the retired beacon and twisted into a loop. She had probably stepped through it while digging around the metal case. When she pulled away, the wire tightened between two buried brackets. He could cut it in seconds. The dog did not know that. Jonah placed the rescue knife on the snow where she could see it. Then he took off one glove, spread his empty hand, and turned his body sideways. "My name is Jonah," he said. "I'm going to move the snow. Nothing else." The dog's nose worked. Her breath came fast but controlled. She shifted slightly over the metal case. Not away from him. Over the case, guarding it. Jonah brushed snow from the wire, inch by inch. The shepherd growled when his fingers came near her leg. He stopped each time and waited. On the third attempt, she allowed him to touch the cable. "That's enough trust for today," he said. The words had belonged to Eli. Jonah heard his brother's voice as clearly as if the man had spoken beside him. Eli used to say it to nervous search dogs, frightened horses, even people after bad nights. "Enough trust for today. You can earn more tomorrow." Jonah looked at the shepherd's face. A small brass key hung from her collar. The collar itself was dark red leather worn nearly brown. Under the frost, he saw a stamped mountain outline and 3 letters pressed into the strap. EMR. Eli Mercer Rescue. Jonah's bare fingers went numb. The dog watched him recognize it. "No," he said. The word escaped before he could stop it. Eli's private rescue mark had not been used in 6 years. After his disappearance, the county absorbed the equipment. The cooperative took the vehicles, and Jonah personally boxed the remaining tags in the old Mercer cabin. He had stood alone in that house, while neighbors carried out radios and harnesses, every object smelling of pine smoke and wet dog. He had never seen this collar. The shepherd's growl deepened when Jonah leaned closer. He sat back. "Fine." He picked up the knife, kept the blade low, and cut the first strand of wire. The dog flinched. He cut the second. The loop loosened around her leg. She did not move. Jonah examined the visible part of the limb, swelling around the hock. No obvious break. Blood had dried into the fur where the wire rubbed through skin, but the wound was not fresh enough to explain why she remained in the hollow. The metal case did. It was an old telemetry housing 12 inches long, with a weather seal around the lid. Someone had scratched 2 parallel lines across the top. Eli's field mark for data that should not be transmitted over an open channel. Jonah reached for it. The shepherd snapped at the air between them. Her teeth closed inches from his wrist. Jonah did not jerk away. Fast movement invited pursuit. He held still until she released the warning, then slowly withdrew. "You came up here for that," he said. The dog lowered her head over the box. Wind pressed through the pines. Somewhere beyond the ridge, a raven called once. Jonah studied the slope above them. The snowpack was shallow, but a hard slab had formed where wind loaded the open face. Not enough for a large avalanche. Enough to knock a man into the rocks if the layer released. He needed to move the dog before the afternoon temperature rose. He tried food first. A strip of dried venison placed 6 feet away. The shepherd smelled it but did not leave the case. Water next. She drank from a collapsible bowl only after Jonah moved back, then returned her body over the metal. The answer was simple. She would not abandon it. So he stopped asking her to. Jonah slid the case toward her with one hand while using the other to clear space beneath her chest. She stiffened but allowed him to move it. He wrapped the case in a thermal blanket, then left enough fabric exposed for her to keep one paw on it. "I'm taking both of you," he said. The shepherd's eyes narrowed. He almost smiled. Not a negotiation. The instant the words left his mouth, The dog pulled the case closer and looked away. Jonah felt the correction. He took a breath. "There," he said. "Let me try that again." He laid his hand on the snow palm up. "You can stay here until the slope shifts, or you can come down with the box. I'll carry the weight. You decide the rest." For several seconds, nothing moved except the dog's breath. Then she placed her nose against his bare knuckles. The contact lasted less than a second. Enough trust for today. Jonah put the glove back on and built a sling from the thermal blanket. He secured the metal case inside, keeping it close enough for the shepherd to touch. When he slid one arm beneath her chest, she tensed but did not snap. His other arm supported her hips without pressing the injured leg. She was lighter than she should have been. He lifted. The dog made one rough sound and turned her muzzle toward the case. Jonah paused until her nose touched the fabric. "It's here." She settled. The descent took twice as long as the climb. Jonah moved sideways on steep sections boots, cutting careful platforms into the snow. The shepherd watched the trees, the sky, and every turn of the trail. Once, when the wind carried the faint diesel sound of a vehicle below her, body went rigid against him. A dark green rescue truck passed along the lower road. The insignia on the door belonged to Grayson Valley Search Cooperative, Micah's organization. The shepherd buried her muzzle against Jonah's coat until the truck disappeared. Jonah felt it. "You know them." She did not move again until the engine faded. At the utility truck, he placed the metal case on the rear seat and folded a blanket beside it. The shepherd refused to climb while the case remained out of reach. Jonah moved it closer. She climbed with difficulty, dragging the injured leg and curled around the box. He closed the door and stood in the snow with his hand on the frame. The brass key on her collar flashed in the sunlight. Jonah removed the field notebook from his coat and wrote the time, location, condition of the dog and beacon pattern. His handwriting remained square and tight, each line controlled. 3 short. Pause. 2 at the bottom of the page without deciding to. He wrote Eli's name. The drive down should have taken 25 minutes. It took 40 because the handheld receiver on the passenger seat began picking up other signals. At first, Jonah thought the old unit was malfunctioning. Then he passed Beacon 12 near the western switchback. Its automated pulse arrived 7 seconds later than the receiver clock predicted. Beacon 11 did the same. So did the lower weather relay near Grayson Creek. Jonah checked his cracked watch, then the truck clock, then the receiver's internal timer. 7 seconds. Exactly. That was not drift. Drift varied between devices. This was a programmed delay. The shepherd raised her head when the next pulse came through the speaker. Her ears moved forward. Jonah looked at her in the mirror. "You heard it before I did, didn't you?" She stared past him toward the road behind. A white SUV had appeared at the last bend. It stayed 3 vehicle lengths back. Jonah reduced speed. The SUV reduced speed. He accelerated on the straight stretch. It matched him without closing distance. The shepherd rose despite her injured leg and stood over the metal case. Jonah noted the vehicle's grille roof lights and county permit sticker. No front plate was required in the state, but the temporary access card on the windshield carried the cooperative's blue mountain emblem. Micah's people again. The SUV followed them through 2 turns, then disappeared when Jonah took the narrow road toward Bell Creek Veterinary Clinic. Dr. Claire Bell had treated working dogs in Grayson Valley for more than 20 years. Her clinic occupied an old fire station beside the creek, with 2 exam rooms, a surgery bay, and a covered run built where the engine bays once stood. Jonah had known Claire since high school and trusted her in the limited way he trusted anyone. She did not soften facts to protect feelings. She opened the side door before he knocked. Claire was 52, lean, dark-haired, and still wearing a headlamp from a morning livestock call. A navy sweater showed beneath her clinic coat. Her gray eyes moved from Jonah to the shepherd and then to the brass key. Her face changed. "Where did you find her?" Jonah heard the word. "Not a dog. Her, you know this animal." Claire stepped closer, then stopped when the shepherd's body tightened around the metal case. "I know the collar. That wasn't my question." Claire looked at the notched ear, the smoke-gray coat, and the white toe on the front foot. Her voice lowered. "Sable." The shepherd's eyes moved to her. Jonah felt the room narrow. Claire pressed her lips together. "I was told she died 4 years ago." Behind them, from the receiver on Jonah's dashboard, an avalanche beacon pulsed through the open truck door. 3 short. Pause. 2 7 seconds late. Sable turned her head toward the sound. Then the metal case beneath her gave a single answering click. Claire Bell did not reach for Sable until the dog decided the distance between them was safe. She opened the clinic's rear treatment room, dimmed the overhead lights, and rolled a padded platform close to the floor. No stainless steel table. No restraints laid out in advance. Claire had spent enough years treating search dogs to know that equipment could announce an argument before anyone spoke. Jonah carried the telemetry case inside first. Sable followed it. She climbed down from the truck on 3 legs, refusing Jonah's support until the injured hind leg folded beneath her. He caught her under the ribs before she struck the concrete. Her head snapped toward his hand, but she did not bite. "Easy," Claire said. "I have her. I was talking to you." Jonah looked at her. Claire held the door open. "Put the box beside the platform. Then take off the radio." Jonah touched the handheld clipped to his belt. "Why, Sable is watching it instead of you." The dog's amber eyes were fixed on the black receiver. Jonah unclipped it and placed it on a shelf. Sable's shoulders lowered by a fraction. Claire noticed. So did he. The treatment room smelled of antiseptic cedar shavings and the medicinal soap Claire used after livestock calls. A framed avalanche map covered one wall. On another hung a row of photographs showing retired working dogs lying on porches beside wood stoves or in the back seats of family trucks. No medals, no staged uniforms, just animals at rest. Sable settled with one paw touching the metal case. Claire crouched 6 feet away. "Hello, old girl." Sable's notched ear turned toward her voice. Jonah leaned against the wall, arms folded. "You said you were told she died." Claire did not look away from the dog. "That's what the cooperative record said." "Whose record?" "Grayson Valley Search." "Micah's." Claire's hand paused over the treat pouch at her waist. The cooperative existed before Micah took over. That wasn't a defense. It wasn't meant as one. She placed a piece of cooked chicken on the floor between them. Sable smelled it, then returned her attention to Jonah's radio on the shelf. Claire moved the food closer. "Let me examine the leg," she said quietly. "No one is taking the case." Sable watched her for another 10 seconds. Then, she shifted just enough to expose the injured hock. Claire approached sideways. She touched the shoulder first, then ran one hand down the ribs. Sable's coat hid the worst of her condition. Beneath it, she was thin, dehydrated, and tight with old muscle instead of healthy weight. Scars crossed the inside of her forelegs where harness straps had once rubbed. Her pads were cracked from distance travel. "This didn't happen last night," Claire said. "The wire wound did. I mean the rest." Claire palpated the swollen joint. Sable's breathing changed, but she held still. "Partial ligament damage," Claire said. "Maybe older. The swelling is new, but the instability isn't." "Can she walk?" "She already did. The better question is whether she should." Claire checked Sable's gums and temperature, then listened to her heart. She took a blood sample with Jonah holding a dish of chicken near the dog's nose. Sable ignored the food but allowed the needle. When Claire moved toward the collar, Sable raised her head. Jonah stepped forward. Claire stopped. "I need the microchip number. Scanner first. You giving veterinary instructions now." "I'm avoiding a fight." Claire's mouth moved slightly. Not a smile, close enough to remind him she had once known him before silence became his preferred company. She passed the scanner over Sable's shoulders. A number appeared. Claire looked at the screen and went still. Jonah saw it. "What?" "Nothing yet." That phrase usually means something. Claire crossed to the computer. Her fingers moved over the keyboard. She entered the number, waited for the county database, then logged into a second system Jonah did not recognize. Sable kept one paw on the case. The printer woke with a mechanical whine. A single page slid out. Claire read it twice. "Say it," Jonah said. "The county database lists Sable as deceased." "You already told me that." "The cooperative archive lists her as missing." Jonah straightened. Same kip. Same kip. 2 entries. 1 death declaration filed 4 years ago. 1 internal missing dog notice filed 18 months later and never sent to the county. Who signed them? Claire's eyes moved down the page. The death declaration carries a digital approval from Dr. Lena Pruitt. She retired to Arizona before the date shown. Forgery, or an old credential used by someone else. And the missing notice. Claire did not answer immediately. Claire. Micah Mercer. Jonah looked at Sable. The dog lowered her muzzle to the telemetry case. Claire pulled up another screen. There's more. Her vaccination records stopped 6 years ago, then resume under a different kennel number. Same chip, shortened call, name no photograph. What call name? Sab Jonah felt something cold settle beneath his anger. Why change it? To make a search less obvious. To separate field records from county records. There are legitimate reasons in large programs, but none of them fit this. Can you print everything? I can print what I'm authorized to access. Do it. Claire looked at him over the monitor. You're already deciding what this is. I'm documenting what it is. No. You're building a target. Jonah's voice stayed level. Micah declared Eli's dog dead, then listed her missing under another record. Eli's dog, Claire repeated. You don't know that yet. The collar says enough. The collar says Eli handled her. It doesn't tell you who owned her, who trained her, or where she went after he disappeared. Jonah looked at the wall map rather than her face. Black lines marked winter routes through Grayson Pass. One line, the old Mercer Cut Trail, had been covered by a newer red risk zone. Why were you told she died? He asked. Claire removed her gloves and dropped them into the bin. Because I asked where she went. The room quieted. Jonah turned back. Claire folded her arms. The winter before Eli disappeared, Sable began refusing certain deployments after a bad slide. I recommended retirement then. A real one, no demonstrations, no breeding assessment, no transfer program. A quiet home with someone she knew. Who denied it? Eli refused the first recommendation. He believed routine kept her stable, and he thought stepping away from work would make her worse. Jonah said nothing. After he disappeared, Sable stopped working with anyone else entirely. Claire continued. She would ride to a search staging area, but she wouldn't deploy. She watched every truck that came down the mountain. She slept beside the equipment cage. When the old Mercer cabin was sold to the cooperative, she broke through a kennel gate and ran 12 miles to the porch. So you recommended retirement again? Yes, that time the medical committee denied it. Micah chaired that committee. By then, yes. Jonah walked to the window. Bell Creek ran dark between shelves of ice. Across the road, a plow cleared the clinic lot, pushing snow into a bank that caught sunlight like broken glass. What happened after the search ended? Micah moved Sable into the cooperative's long-term program. Then access to her records narrowed. A year later, I saw the death entry. And you accepted it. Claire's jaw tightened. I requested a body report. Did you get one? No. Did you keep asking? For 6 months. Then the county veterinary board received a complaint that I had mishandled sedation during a rescue transport. Jonah looked at her. Did you know who filed it? Anonymous. That means Micah. It means anonymous. Jonah hated caution when he wanted certainty. He also knew Claire was right. Sable shifted on the platform. Her injured leg trembled. Claire returned to her, placed a padded wrap around the hock, and secured it without pulling tight. Sable watched each movement. When Claire finished, the dog touched her nose briefly to Claire's wrist. Claire closed her eyes for 1 second. You remember me, she whispered. Sable withdrew and put her paw back on the case. Jonah saw the order of loyalty. Not unkind. Precisi. Claire prepared fluids beneath the skin, antibiotics for the wire wound, and pain medication light enough not to dull the dog's awareness. She wrote instructions in large block letters, even though Jonah could have memorized them after one reading. No climbing, she said. She climbed before I found her, and now she stops. She decides that. Claire glanced at him. You learned quickly. The remark landed closer to the bone than she knew. Jonah's phone rang. The screen showed Micah Mercer. He stared at the name. Claire saw it. Don't answer yet. He knows I'm here. That doesn't mean you give him information. He may already have it. Then make him reveal what he knows. Jonah answered. Micah. His nephew's voice came warm and immediate. Uncle Jonah, I heard you're back on the upper relays. Who told you? The county work board. I still get operations notices. You get veterinary notices too. Silence. Short but real. Micah recovered. Claire called about a working dog. Claire's head snapped toward Jonah. She mouthed, "I did not." Jonah watched her. "What dog?" he asked. Another pause. Micah sighed. "Don't do that. If it's Sable, I need to know her condition." Jonah looked at the shepherd. She had raised her head at the sound of Micah's voice through the phone. Her ears flattened. "You declared her dead," Jonah said. That record was an administrative closure. Dead is a specific kind of closure. It kept private adopters from being contacted after she left the program. Left how? She was placed with a remote handler. Name confidential. Location confidential. Did she leave or did she run? Micah's tone changed. Not enough for anyone else to hear. Jonah heard it. "Where is she?" That sounded like an order. Its concern. So was Eli's. The line went quiet. Jonah had not planned to say his brother's name. He felt Claire watching him. Micah spoke more carefully. "Sable was my father's partner. Whatever you think of the cooperative, I have a right to make sure she's safe." "A right based on what?" "History. History isn't ownership. You don't know the history." "Then tell me." Micah breathed out. "Bring her to the main facility. Claire can come. You can stay in the room. I'm not trying to take her from you. She isn't mine." "Then stop acting like this is your decision." Jonah looked at Sable again. The dog's body was tight, her eyes fixed on the phone. He ended the call. Claire reached for the device. "Why did you answer?" "Now we know someone told him before you called. And now he knows you have her." "He already knew. You don't know that. He used her name before I did." Claire went still. The mistake had at least produced a fact. That did not make it less of a mistake. Jonah put the phone away. "Who has access to your computer?" "My staff and the cooperative veterinary portal." "Disconnect it." Claire crossed to the desk and unplugged the network cable. Then she looked at the printed records. "We need copies somewhere else." "I know. And we need to stop talking about this in rooms connected to their system." "I know." Claire gathered the pages into a folder. "You say that a lot. It saves time." "No, it ends conversations before you have to admit someone else may be right." Jonah took the folder from her. Sable watched the exchange. He almost told Claire this was not the day to discuss old habits. Then he remembered how quickly he had called Micah because uncertainty felt worse than exposure. "I should have waited," he said. Claire's expression softened, but she did not reward him for the admission. "Yes." She gave him the medication and a folded orthopedic mat. "Take her somewhere Micah cannot enter without being seen." "The old relay cabin." "No heat. My place." Claire looked surprised. Jonah's home sat above Juniper Gulch, 3 miles from his nearest neighbor. He had not invited anyone inside since the winter after Eli disappeared. "That will work," she said. They moved Sable to the truck. This time, Jonah placed the telemetry case inside first and let her climb at her own pace. She used the running board, slipped once, then waited. Jonah offered his forearm rather than grabbing her body. Sable leaned against it. Enough trust for today. The white SUV was parked across Bell Creek when Jonah pulled out. It followed. Jonah drove through town instead of taking the direct road home. Grayson Valley consisted of one main street, a county building, 2 churches, a grocery store, and businesses that survived winter by repairing what summer tourists broke. Christmas garlands hung between old brick storefronts. A wooden sign outside May Holloway's feed store read, "Calving Chains Propane Coffee," in that order. The SUV remained behind him. At the north intersection, a cooperative rescue truck approached with lights on but no siren. Sable rose over the telemetry case. Her lips pulled back. Jonah reached for the radio clipped near the dashboard. She growled. He stopped. The cooperative truck passed. The driver, a young man in a blue mountain jacket, looked directly into Jonah's cab. Sable trembled until Jonah removed the radio from its mount and placed it on the floor. The growl ended. The white SUV turned away at the next street. Jonah drove another mile before speaking. "Not the trucks," he said. "The sound." Sable lowered herself beside the case. At his house, he carried the orthopedic mat to the living room and started a fire in the iron stove. The cabin had 2 rooms, clean counters, stacked firewood, and nothing on the walls except a topographic map and an old photograph turned face down on a shelf. Sable entered slowly. She inspected the doorway, the corners, and the route to the back exit. Then she placed herself between the telemetry case and the window. Jonah set water nearby and opened the folder Claire had printed. The death record was real. The missing report was real. The signatures contradicted each other. At the bottom of the internal missing notice, one line had been added in smaller text. Animal repeatedly seeks former handler route. Avoid exposure to Mercer cut relay sequence. Jonah read it twice. Then, a tone sounded from the handheld receiver he had left on the kitchen table. 3 short pulses. Pause. 2. Sable lifted her head. The telemetry case answered with another click. This time, a thin strip of paper emerged from a slot Jonah had not noticed along the side. One line had been printed in faded blue ink. By the 3rd pulse from the telemetry case, Jonah had stopped treating the machine as dead equipment. The strip of paper lay across his kitchen table beneath the lamp. Sequence offset. 7 seconds. The letters were faint, but the mechanism had printed them cleanly. Jonah turned the metal housing over and found a hand-cranked reserve generator bolted into the underside. Eli had used similar systems in mountain relays because batteries failed in cold and electronics could be wiped remotely. Mechanical backups did not care who owned the network. Sable lay near the stove with the injured leg extended on Claire's pad. She had eaten half a bowl of chicken and rice, then carried one piece to the telemetry case and left it beside the lid. Jonah watched her do it. For him, he asked. Her notched ear moved. The old face-down photograph on the shelf seemed to pull at him. He crossed the room, picked it up, and turned it over. Eli stood in front of the first Grayson rescue truck, younger by 15 years, wearing a red climbing helmet under one arm. Beside him, Micah was 17 and trying not to smile. A sable German shepherd sat between them, too young to have gray around her muzzle but marked by the same white toe. Sable. Jonah had taken the photograph. He remembered complaining that Eli was late for dinner. He remembered Micah asking to keep the dog overnight. He remembered almost nothing about Sable herself. That absence felt like evidence against him. His phone buzzed with a message from Claire. Off network. Come to Holloway feed. May has records. Jonah read it twice. Claire did not send dramatic messages. If she was willing to involve May Holloway, the problem had already escaped the clinic. He looked at Sable. No climbing, he said. She rose before he finished. Jonah sighed and opened the front door. The wind had shifted overnight. Clouds moved over the high ridge, thin at first, then gathering around Grayson Peak. The forecast called for 6 inches by evening. Mountain forecasts were polite guesses made by people who worked lower than the weather. Sable climbed into the truck with less difficulty than the day before. Jonah secured the telemetry case where she could keep one paw against it. He left the radio on the floor. Holloway Feed occupied a long timber building at the south edge of town. 50 years of wind had polished the sign above the door. Hay bales filled one side of the lot. On the other, a row of propane tanks stood behind yellow posts. May's handwritten sign remained outside, though someone had added a second board beneath it. No credit for men who say the check is coming. Jonah parked near the loading dock. May Holloway came out before he reached the door. She was 64, compact and strong, with silver hair braided beneath a brown felt hat. Her green work coat had a tear repaired with black thread at one elbow. She wore no gloves despite the cold. You brought the dog, she said. The dog brought me. May looked through the truck window. Sable looked back. Eli's girl, May said. Jonah's hand tightened on the door handle. Everyone knows her except me. Not everyone. Just the people you stopped talking to. May turned and walked inside. The feed store smelled of grain leather coffee and the warm dust of old wood. A calico cat slept on a stack of mineral blocks. Claire waited in the back office, beside a metal desk, covered with county notices, property maps, and envelopes. Sable entered, but remained close to Jonah. The cat opened one eye, considered the shepherd, and returned to sleep. May pointed at the maps. That's my ranch. That was Everett Stone's. That was the Lawson place. Those two belonged to families who moved after the pass, closed 3 winters in a row. Colored pins marked the valley. Red pins clustered along the old Mercer cut route. Blue pins sat on properties nearer town. What do the colors mean? Jonah asked. Red means sold. Blue means still fighting. Sold to whom? May pushed a stack of deeds toward him. North Range Holdings, Coldwater Stewardship, Seven Pines, Conservation, Mountain Legacy Partners, different companies, same attorney, same mailing service in Denver, same lender. Jonah read the names. Each purchase had occurred within 6 months of an extended road closure or a revised avalanche designation. Claire set down 2 coffee cups. May came to me because the closures were affecting livestock access. I started comparing dates after I found the duplicate chip records. Jonah traced the old road on the map. Mercer Cut used to stay open unless the upper bowl reached level 4. Now they close it at level 2, May said. Sometimes before snowfalls. Who approves that? Grayson Valley Search recommends. County Emergency Management signs. Micah recommends. Micah provides the data May corrected. The county signs because no one wants to overrule the man whose teams pull people out of avalanches. The sentence held the shape of the valley's dependents. Micah's cooperative had saved hikers, hunters, snowmobilers, utility workers, and 2 school buses during the blizzard 4 years ago. His name appeared on donation plaques and county awards. People trusted him for reasons more substantial than charm. Jonah looked at the property map again. What happens after the land is sold? May tapped the red pins. Nothing. No construction. No logging. No public access. The companies pay taxes and leave the ground empty. Why buy it? That's what I'd like to know. Claire opened a folder. The cooperative proposed a protected rescue corridor last spring. It follows the same parcels. Jonah read the proposal. The language emphasized watershed preservation, emergency access, and preventing resort development. All reasonable goals. Micah may believe he's protecting the valley, Claire said. May gave her a hard look. Belief doesn't lower my mortgage. I'm not defending him. You always say that before explaining him. Claire accepted the hit without answering. Jonah noticed Sable moving toward the map table. She smelled the lower corner of the paper, then touched her nose to a faded pencil line beneath the new red avalanche zones. The line ran from Mercer Cut to an abandoned relay cabin marked R4. Jonah bent closer. That route isn't on current maps. May nodded. Closed after Eli disappeared. Because the shelf was unstable, that's what the report said. Sable pressed her nose to the line again. Claire watched her. She used that trail with Eli. Jonah looked at the dog. How often? Every winter. Relay checks, missing livestock, backcountry calls. Eli said Sable could find the cabin in a whiteout. The calico cat jumped down from the mineral blocks and walked across the office as if the humans had become boring. Sable watched it pass, then glanced at Jonah. He expected pursuit. Instead, she picked up one of his gloves from the floor. Jonah had dropped it beside the chair without noticing. Sable carried it 3 steps and set it against his boot. May's face softened first. Claire looked away to hide a smile. Jonah stared at the glove. Eli had trained dogs to return dropped equipment, a useful command on steep terrain. But Sable did not sit for praise or look toward the telemetry case. She simply returned to the map and lay down. Jonah picked up the glove. "Thank you," he said. The words felt awkward. Sable's tail touched the floor once. A small sound. A small mercy. May poured coffee into a chipped mug labeled "World's Okayest Rancher." "I have more." She opened a drawer and removed a bundle of county closure notices. Each included the warning level, the time of issue, and the relay source. Jonah arranged them by date. R-SUV Arni. R11. Different relays. Same issuing terminal. GVS primary. He compared the timestamps. The warning records were all generated within seconds of a data threshold. That looked normal. Then he checked the original sensor receipt times, printed in smaller text. Every event had a 7-second gap. "Here," he said. Claire leaned over his shoulder. May put on reading glasses. "What am I looking at?" "The sensor sends. The central system receives 7 seconds later. Mountains interfere with radio, not identically across 6 devices for 3 years. Claire's expression changed. "The same delay as the beacons." Jonah nodded. "What can happen in 7 seconds?" May asked. "A second signal can overwrite the first." The office went quiet. Jonah drew 2 lines on a blank sheet. A relay reports stable snow. The system holds it for 7 seconds. During the hold, a command replaces the packet with a higher risk reading. The county sees a valid message from a valid relay. No obvious alteration. Can you prove that? Not from notices. Claire looked at the telemetry case. But Eli's machine might have recorded the original packets. Sable raised her head at Eli's name. May removed her glasses. Then why didn't he expose it? Jonah knew the answer before he spoke. Because I stopped him. Neither woman responded. 6 years earlier, Eli had called Jonah from the upper range during a storm. His words came fast, broken by wind and radio interference. Coordinates are being corrected after send. Someone is moving the field. Jonah had assumed his brother was exhausted and confused. Eli had already missed 2 check-ins and rerouted a volunteer team without authorization. Jonah, then a federal rescue advisor with a reputation for clean decisions, had ordered the county to disregard Eli's manual updates until another team verified them. The second team never reached him. By morning, an avalanche had erased the cabin approach. Eli's body was not recovered. The official inquiry found that he had transmitted inconsistent coordinates. Jonah testified to that fact. He had called it a fact for 6 years. Claire spoke carefully. You didn't create the delay. No, I gave it authority. May folded the closure notices. Guilt is useful only if it tells you what to do next. Jonah looked at her. That's an Eli sentence. He stole it from me. The feed store door opened. Boots crossed the front room. A man called for May. She left the office and returned with a certified envelope. Her name was typed across the front. May opened it with a utility knife. Jonah watched her eyes move over the page. What Claire asked. May handed it to Jonah. Notice of accelerated default and access limitation. The lender had moved her winter payment deadline forward under an emergency risk clause. Continued road closures reduced the property's insured value. If she failed to refinance within 30 days, the note could be transferred. The receiving company was North Range Holdings. One of the red pin buyers. May took off her hat and placed it on the desk. For the first time, she looked her age. They said the same thing to Everett, she said. He sold 2 weeks later. Jonah read the clause. Who certified the increased risk? May pointed to the attached assessment. Grayson Valley Search Cooperative. Claire whispered something Jonah did not catch. May looked at Sable. Your old partner's son is about to take my land. Sable's ears lowered. Jonah folded the letter and returned it to the envelope. Not yet. May's gaze sharpened. Do not promise me a victory because you need one. I'm promising an examination. That I'll accept. Jonah photographed every page and copied the files to an encrypted drive. Claire printed the microchip records again from an offline backup. May brought out a ledger of road closure dates and livestock losses. By noon, the desk held enough paper to prove a pattern, but not enough to prove who created it. They needed the source logs. Jonah studied the old pencil route to Relay Cabin R4. Who owns the cabin? The cooperative, Claire said. Who owns the access trail? May pointed at a narrow strip crossing her property. I do until the bank says otherwise. Jonah folded the map. Sable stood. Claire stepped between them and the door. Her leg cannot handle that climb. We're not climbing today. Your face says you are. We're checking the lower gate. Jonah, he looked at Sable. The dog was already beside the old route line waiting. No climbing, he repeated. May snorted. You two communicate beautifully. They drove to the lower trailhead in May's ranch truck because it had chains and no cooperative tracking unit. Snow began falling as they crossed the pasture. Horses stood with their backs to the wind, dark shapes beneath cottonwood trees. Sable watched them through the rear window but remained quiet. The R4 access gate stood a mile above the ranch house. A new chain wrapped the posts. The cooperative had hung a sign across it, closed extreme avalanche risk. Jonah checked the slope. Wind loading was light. No recent fracture lines. The warning might become accurate by night, but it was not accurate now. Sable climbed out before he could stop her. She limped to the gate and smelled the chain. Then she moved to a wooden boundary post, half buried beside the ditch. Jonah followed. An old copper disc had been nailed to the wood. Eli's Ruta marker. Sable scratched beneath it. May brought a small shovel from the truck. Jonah cleared the snow and found a metal survey tube driven into the ground. Inside was a rolled topographic sheet, sealed in waxed cloth. 2 sets of lines covered the map. Black ink marked the official relay network. Faded green ink showed a parallel path connecting R4 to 3 decommissioned stations and the upper Mercer Cut beacon. At the bottom, Eli had written one sentence: "If primary runs late, follow green." Claire looked toward the ridge. A rescue siren sounded from town, faint through the falling snow. Sable did not react. Then Jonah heard another sound from higher on the trail. 2 low notes from a metal whistle. Eli's field recall. Sable's head snapped up. Despite the injured leg, she moved toward the locked gate. Someone was waiting on the other side. Micah Mercer stepped through the snow above the locked gate, with Eli's whistle hanging from his hand. He wore the cooperative's blue mountain jacket, the hood down despite the weather. At 39, he had Eli's height and his mother's narrow face, though the resemblance to Jonah appeared in the stillness around the eyes. 2 rescue technicians waited 20 yards behind him, beside a tracked utility vehicle. Sable stood at the gate, injured foot lifted, every part of her attention fixed on the whistle. Micah did not blow it again. "Hello, girl," he said. Sable's ears moved forward. Jonah watched her body. Recognition, yes. Not comfort. Micah looked past the dog to Jonah, Claire, and May. "The trail is closed." "The sign is new," May said. "The risk is not." May pointed toward the open slope. "You issued a level 4 warning on a level 2 face." Micah's expression remained patient. Wind changed above the ridge. "Not enough. You're welcome to place your ranch against that opinion. I'm responsible for everyone who crosses this gate." "No," Jonah said. "You're responsible for the recommendation. The county owns the closure." Micah's eyes came to him, still choosing exact language when the truth is uncomfortable. Jonah felt the old family rhythm settle between them. Eli had argued with emotion, Micah with precision. Jonah had always found precision easier to respect. Until now. "Where did you get the whistle?" Jonah asked. "My father gave it to me." "When?" "The winter before he disappeared." "Why?" "Because I trained with Sable too." Micah crouched on the other side of the gate and held the whistle where she could smell his glove. Sable took 1 step forward, then stopped when the chain rattled. "She remembers me," he said. "She remembers the sound." Micah looked up. "You'd prefer she didn't." Jonah did not answer. Claire moved beside Sable. "Her leg needs rest." "We're leaving." Micah stood. "Good. Bring her to the cooperative clinic." "No." The answer came from Claire before Jonah spoke. Micah's attention shifted to her. "You don't have the equipment for long-term recovery." "I have enough for tonight. And tomorrow. I'll decide tomorrow when I see her tomorrow." A small line appeared between Micah's eyebrows. "You used to believe continuity mattered. I used to believe your records." The 2 technicians behind him looked away from each other. Micah saw that. His voice lowered. "This is not the place. It became the place when you followed us. I followed a dog listed as missing from a program my father built." "You also declared her dead," Jonah said. Micah's jaw tightened. May took the certified letter from her coat and held it against the gate. "Did you certify my ranch as an increased avalanche risk?" "I signed the seasonal assessment." "Did you know North Range Holdings would receive my loan if I defaulted?" "No." The answer arrived cleanly. Jonah studied him. Micah was good at controlling pace, but he had not prepared for May's question. Surprise crossed his face before discipline closed it. "You expect us to believe that?" May asked. "I expect you to distinguish my safety recommendation from a lender's decision." "Same lawyer," she said. Micah looked at Jonah. "You've been back 2 days and already turned half the valley into suspects." "Only the half with duplicate records." "And what happens when your certainty is wrong again?" The snow seemed to pause between them. Jonah felt Claire look toward him. May did not know enough to understand the blow. Micah did. He continued softly. "You stood in the county hall and told everyone my father had become unreliable. You described his corrections as confusion. You put your reputation behind the wrong coordinates, and people believed you because you were Jonah Mercer." Jonah kept his hands still. Micah's anger did not rise. It deepened. "My father died with half the valley thinking he endangered his own team. I spent 6 years repairing what your testimony did to his name. Now you find his dog and decide you're the only man capable of protecting her." Sable looked from Micah to Jonah. Jonah's chest tightened. "You're right about one thing," he said. "I chose the wrong coordinates." Micah seemed unprepared for the admission. "But if your system is delaying signals, I intend to learn why." "My system is not delaying anything." "Then open the RVR logs. The cabin is unsafe. Open them remotely. R4 is decommissioned." "Then why does the primary network still receive its handshake?" For the first time, Micah's eyes moved toward the map tube in Jonah's hand. A small movement. "Enough. You found the green network," he said. May swore under her breath. Jonah held Micah's gaze. "You knew it existed. My father designed it. Why hide it from county maps? Because unauthorized people would mistake obsolete routes for safe access. Or because it records packets before your 7-second hold." One of the technicians shifted beside the utility vehicle. Micah's voice sharpened. "That theory will get someone killed if you walk into unstable terrain trying to prove it. Unlock the gate." "No." Jonah stepped closer. Sable growled. Not at Micah. At Jonah. The sound stopped him. She stood between his leg and the chainhead low, amber eyes fixed on his face. Her injured foot shook against the snow. Jonah saw what she felt before he admitted it. He was no longer thinking about the slope. He was thinking about forcing Micah to yield. He stepped back. Sable's growl ended. Micah watched the exchange. Something like sadness crossed his face. "She did that with Dad," he said. When he stopped listening, Jonah hated him for saying it. He hated himself more because it was probably true. May folded the certified letter and returned it to her coat. "We're done here." Micah nodded toward the descending weather. "Use the east road. The western shelf will load by afternoon." Jonah looked up. Cloud had thickened above the ridge. Fine snow streamed over the crest. The western face was beginning to feather. For once Micah's warning matched what Jonah could see. They returned to the truck. Sable hesitated at the passenger door. She looked back at Micah. He raised the whistle but did not sound it. Then he set it on top of the gatepost on Jonah's side of the chain. "Take it," Micah said. "She knows that call." Jonah pocketed the whistle without thanking him. "Go with him," Micah told Sable. Sable climbed inside. Jonah could not decide whether the gesture was kindness, permission, or strategy. That uncertainty stayed with him through the afternoon. At the county archive, Marin Cole met them in a basement room lined with gray shelves. She had arrived from Denver that morning, after Claire sent copies of the chip records to an old military legal contact. At 47, Marin carried herself like someone who had spent years entering rooms where nobody expected her to be the hardest person present. Straight black hair touched her collar. A gray scarf lay folded over a camel coat on the back of a chair. She reviewed the property deeds without greeting Jonah beyond his name. "North Range Holdings is owned by a trust," she said. "The trust beneficiary is sealed, but its registered manager is the same attorney who represents the cooperative." Micah May asked. "Not on paper. Can paper be made to talk?" "Eventually. Paper is slow, not silent." Marin examined the closure notices and the 7-second discrepancy. "You need source logs and chain of custody. Without both, they'll say a software update caused the delay." "R4 has local storage," Jonah said. "Can you access it legally?" "The cabin sits on cooperative land." May tapped the green route. "The lower trail crosses mine. That gets you to the boundary. It does not get you into the building." "The cooperative can open it," Claire said. "They won't." Marin looked at Jonah. "Then we request preservation through the county." "How long?" 48 hours if a judge moves quickly. May has 30 days before default. And you have the rest of your life if you turn a civil fraud case into criminal trespass. Jonah did not appreciate the accuracy. Marin reached for another archive box. County Emergency Management should have duplicate summaries. They searched for 3 hours. The duplicate summaries existed, but all raw relay packets before the previous year had been destroyed under a routine retention schedule approved by the county. Every deletion form was signed. Every date complied with policy. Nothing looked hidden because the process had been designed to resemble housekeeping. May sat on the floor between 2 shelves and read the final destruction notice. "They erased my road one form at a time." Marin crouched beside her. "Not all of it. Banks keep underwriting files. Insurers keep risk models. Contractors keep invoices. We follow the edges. May looked tired. Edges don't stop a foreclosure. No, injunctions do. Can you get one? With better evidence. The answer was honest. It offered no comfort. Near dusk, Jonah found a small maintenance binder wedged behind a stack of outdated weather reports. The cover read, R4 Access and Calibration. Most pages had been removed. One remained. A hand-drawn route showed 2 approaches to the cabin. The green path from May's ranch and a newer official route over the western shelf. Someone had stamped the green route unsafe permanent closure. The western route was marked approved. Sable smelled the page and turned away from the official line. Jonah remembered her behavior at the gate. He also remembered Micah saying the western shelf would load by afternoon. Tomorrow, he said, we inspect the route, not the cabin. Claire shook her head. The storm is here, which is when the warning system matters. Marin closed the binder. No entry, no entry. May looked at him. And when you get to the door, I photograph it and leave. No one believed him entirely. The next morning arrived white and nearly windless. Snow muted the valley. Jonah left before sunrise, with Sable in the truck and the telemetry case secured behind the seat. Claire followed in her clinic vehicle. May stayed home to meet a bank appraiser. Marin filed the preservation request. At the lower gate, Jonah chose the official western route. Sable refused. She planted all 4 feet beside the green trail marker. The injured leg trembled beneath her, but she would not move toward the shelf. Jonah clipped a long lead to her collar. Official route, he said. Sable pulled backward. The green path crosses a closed drainage. She lowered her body. Jonah felt impatience rise. Sablecom. The command echoed off the trees. She looked at him with the same measuring expression she had given him beneath the beacon. Claire approached. Listen to Hare. I'm listening to terrain data. Data Micah controls. The shelf was stable at dawn. Sable twisted against the lead. Jonah tightened his grip. Come. The dog's collar pulled against her neck. She made no sound. That silence angered him more than resistance. He moved forward. Sable followed because the lead gave her no choice. They had crossed less than 100 yards of the western shelf when the snow beneath Jonah's right boot cracked. The sound was quiet, a flat wooden knock under the surface. Claire stopped behind him. Jonah. A fracture line raced across the slope above. The slab released. It was not a full avalanche. 20 yards of wind-packed snow broke loose and slid over the shelf in a widening sheet. Jonah dropped the lead, drove one knee into the slope and grabbed Sable's harness. The moving slab struck his legs and carried him sideways. Claire caught a pine trunk. Jonah and Sable slid 15 feet before he drove the rescue shovel into harder snow below. The blade held. His shoulder nearly tore from the socket. Sable hung against him, body twisted, injured leg trapped beneath loose debris. The slide stopped at the edge of a granite chute. 3 more feet, and they would have gone over. Jonah dug Sable free with his hands. She did not bite when he touched the injured leg. She only panted against his chest while Claire crawled down with a rope. They reached stable ground 10 minutes later. The official route above them had disappeared. The green trail remained untouched beneath the trees. Jonah sat in the snow, breathing hard. Sable stood several feet away, the lead dragging behind her. He reached toward it. She stepped back. The distance hurt more than his shoulder. I was wrong, he said. Sable turned her head toward the green route. A phone vibrated inside Claire's coat. May's name appeared on the screen. Claire answered and listened. Her face lost color. What happened? Jonah asked. Claire put the call on speaker. May's voice came thin through wind noise. The bank appraiser brought a transfer officer. They moved the default date. I have 72 hours to accept a sale, or they freeze operating credit. To North Range, Marin asked through another line. Claire connected. Yes, May inhaled unsteadily. I can't feed 40 horses without the credit account. Jonah looked at the buried official route. His choice had wasted half the morning. The preservation order had not arrived. May's time had collapsed from 30 days to 3. He stood. Sable was gone. The lead lay empty on the snow. Jonah turned in a full circle. Tracks led toward the green trail, then vanished, where wind swept powder through the trees. Sable. No response. He followed, shoulder burning. The whiteout thickened between the pines. Visibility fell to 20 yards, then 10. Claire called his name behind him, but the wind tore it apart. Jonah found one paw print near the old copper marker. Then, nothing. He pulled Eli's whistle from his coat, the one Micah had left on the gatepost. He blew 2 low notes. The sound disappeared into white. Far above, from the direction of Relay Cabin R4, a dog barked once. Then a second sound followed, a metal door closing. The metal door closed again before Jonah reached the first stand of pines. Not slammed, drawn shut against the wind. Someone had entered Relay Cabin R4. Jonah followed the sound uphill, moving along the green route Eli had marked. The trail curved beneath the western shelf instead of crossing it. Trees broke the wind and anchored the snow. Even in the whiteout, the ground remained firm under Jonah's boots. Sable had known. Claire caught up 20 yards behind him with a medical pack strapped over one shoulder. Your arm, still attached. That is not an examination. We examine it after the dog. Of course we do. The whiteout swallowed the lower valley. Snow moved horizontally through the branches, dry and fine enough to enter every gap in Jonah's coat. His injured shoulder throbbed each time he used the pole for balance. He kept the left arm close to his body and climbed with the right. Sable's tracks reappeared, where the trail narrowed between 2 granite walls. One paw dragged. A dark spot marked the snow. Blood. Jonah increased his pace. The cabin stood beneath the cliff like a forgotten tool. Gray boards. Low roof. One narrow window covered by an iron shutter. The relay mast beside it had snapped halfway up, but a thin green wire still ran from the base into the wall. The door was shut. No footprints showed outside except Sable's. Jonah stopped. The second set might have filled in, but not that quickly under tree cover. Claire pointed at the handle. Scratch marks. Fresh lines crossed the lower wood. Sable had pulled the door closed behind herself. Jonah tried the latch. Locked. He knocked. Once. Sable. A faint scrape answered from inside. He examined the lock. Old brass cylinder. No keypad, no electronic seal. The key on Sable's collar. Jonah took out the rescue knife and worked the thin blade between jam and latch. The shoulder protested. Claire reached for the tool. I can do it. I know. She held out her hand until he gave it to her. Claire opened the latch in less than a minute. You have unexpected skills, Jonah said. Farm calls. People lose keys. Animals don't wait. The door opened inward. Sable lay beside a steel relay cabinet at the back of the cabin. Snow covered her shoulders. The injured leg was bleeding through Claire's wrap. She had dragged the telemetry case from Jonah's truck. Its sling trailed behind her across the floor. Jonah had not seen her take it. The case rested against a circular opening in the relay cabinet, as if she had placed it where memory told her it belonged. Sable lifted her head when Jonah entered. He stopped several feet away. I chose wrong, he said. The dog's gaze remained on him. I should have followed you. Claire moved slowly to the side, unpacking bandages, without blocking Sable's view of the door. Jonah crouched, despite the pain in his shoulder. I'm not putting the lead back on. Sable lowered her head. It was not forgiveness. It was permission to remain in the room. Claire treated the leg, while Jonah examined the cabinet. The circular opening matched a brass fitting on the telemetry case. He inserted the case and twisted. Internal gears engaged with a heavy mechanical click. Nothing else happened. The cabinet had no power. Jonah found a hand crank folded beneath the workbench. He fitted it into the side port and turned. At first, the mechanism resisted. Then, old gears moved under the wall. A low electrical hum filled the cabin. Sable's ears rose. A paper tape began feeding from the cabinet. The first lines were calibration numbers from 6 winters earlier. Temperature, snow depth, signal strength, packet receipt time. Jonah turned faster. The data continued through the week Eli disappeared. Claire read over his shoulder. There. 7-second hold. Each primary packet arrived at R4 and was copied to the green network. 7 seconds later, a second packet reached the county line with altered risk values. The original readings showed moderate instability. The replacements showed severe instability, or on the night Eli vanished, false stability on the western shelf. Jonah stopped cranking. The pattern was clear. Someone had used the delay both ways. Raise danger to close a road. Lower danger to direct a team onto unsafe terrain. Claire stared at the tape. Who had authority to issue replacement packets? Jonah searched the printed command fields. The user identifiers were coded. Gusmet, Gieves, M2, Admin Green. New names. Micah can say the system was compromised, he said. Can it show which terminal? Maybe deeper in the log. The crank turned through 3 more feet of tape. Then the printer stopped. A metal cover inside the cabinet shifted open. Behind it sat a second compartment, no larger than a book. The brass key on Sable's collar fit the lock. Jonah looked at her. She watched the key, then him. He approached, without reaching for the collar. May I? Sable did not move. Claire waited beside her. Jonah held his palm under the key. After several seconds, Sable lifted her head enough for the brass piece to fall into his hand. The key turned once. Inside the compartment were 2 folded maps, a sealed memory card, and a weatherproof voice recorder. Eli's name was scratched across the recorder's back. Jonah sat down on the floor. For 6 years, he had imagined his brother's last hours as an empty white slope. No witness. No explanation. Only broken calls and coordinates that refused to agree. Now Eli's handwriting rested in his hand. Claire finished wrapping Sable's leg and moved toward the door. I can give you privacy. No, Jonah looked at the recorder. If this becomes evidence, someone else needs to hear it from the beginning. Claire sat on the opposite side of the cabin. Jonah pressed play. Static filled the small room. Wind struck an old microphone. Then Eli Mercer spoke. R4 field note. December 18th. If this recorder is found without me, preserve the green network before connecting any cooperative device. Jonah closed his eyes. Eli's voice was older than the one in Jonah's memories, and more tired. It carried the rough edge of someone who had not slept enough. The primary system is holding packets for 7 seconds. I confirmed replacements at 11:12 and Mercer cut. Closures have been raised without field cause. 2 open route readings were lowered before county receipt. Paper shifted on the recording. I confronted Micah. He says the closures protect the valley from development pressure. Says distressed land can be moved into conservation ownership before Denver money reaches it. He believes he's saving the ground by taking choice away from the people standing on it. Claire whispered, "Oh, Micah." Jonah's hand tightened around the recorder. Eli continued, I don't think he intended anyone to get hurt. That sentence is becoming less useful every hour. A dog breathed near the microphone. Sable raised her head. Eli's voice softened. Easy, girl. Jonah will come. The words entered Jonah without warning. He bent forward, forearms on his knees. On the recording, wind struck the cabin. A radio beeped. I sent Jonah the corrected coordinates. He wants independent verification. That is procedure. He's right to want it. I'm wrong to have waited this long before telling him what Micah was doing. Jonah looked up. Eli had not blamed him. The tape moved on. Mercer cut is reading stable here, but primary is showing fracture risk on the east face and clear passage on the western shelf. The shelf is loaded. I'm going out to stop Team 3 before they cross. A second voice came through the recorder, distant and distorted from Eli's radio. Jonah recognized himself. Eli, hold position. Your coordinates have changed twice. Team 3 stays on approved route until verification. Eli answered. The approved route is wrong. Jonah's recorded voice hardened. You are not in command of this operation. Static. Jonah, listen to me. I listened at 11. Then 12. You moved the field both times. Because the field is being moved after send. You're exhausted. Hold the cabin. I can see the fracture line. Hold the cabin, Eli. The recording went quiet except for wind. Then Eli spoke not into the radio, but toward the recorder. He's choosing the screen because I gave him reasons not to trust my voice. Jonah stopped breathing. Eli coughed once. That part is mine. The recorder captured a harness buckle. Sable whining. But I'm going anyway. If I don't come back, the green log proves the western packet was replaced. Jonah will see it when he's ready to look at the whole record, including his part, Claire turned her face toward the shuttered window. Sable stood weakly and crossed the cabin. She placed her muzzle against the recorder. Eli's voice continued beneath the static. "Brother, if this reaches you, don't waste what's left of your life trying to suffer enough to make me alive. Tell the truth. All of it. Then let the truth belong to everyone it costs." The next sound was the cabin door opening. Wind rushed into the microphone. Eli gave 2 low notes on the metal whistle. Sable's entire body changed. For 1 second, the injured dog stood as she must have 6 winters earlier. Ears high, weight forward, ready to follow. Eli said, "Find safe." The recording ended. No dramatic break. No final message. A click, then silence. Jonah remained on the floor. He had spent 6 years repeating the moment he failed Eli, as if guilt could preserve him. He had reduced his brother to a man beneath snow, and himself to the man who issued the wrong order. The truth was larger and less merciful. Eli had hidden Micah's crime. Jonah had refused the warning. Micah had altered the route. The county had trusted Jonah's testimony. No single person owned the whole failure. That meant no single person could carry all the punishment and call the matter settled. Sable lowered herself beside Jonah. She did not lean against him. She placed one paw on the recorder and left it there. Jonah reached toward her, then stopped before touching. "I heard him," he said. Sable's amber eyes closed. Claire broke the silence first. "We need to copy everything." Jonah nodded. He removed the memory card from the compartment and inserted it into an offline reader from his field kit. The card held 6 years of relay packets, property risk revisions, and internal messages. Most were coded, but several included Micah's full administrative certificate. One message linked elevated closure zones to priority conservation acquisition parcels. Another directed staff to classify Sable as deceased after she escaped a private holding site. A third ordered the permanent closure of the Green Route. The evidence was stronger than Jonah expected. It was also dangerous to move. Claire's phone showed no service. The storm had blocked the valley signal. Jonah checked the cooperative radio he had left in the truck, then remembered Sable's fear. "We use the Green Network," he said. "To send where?" "County Emergency Archive. It has a receive-only analog line for old weather packets." "Can Micah stop it?" "If he controls primary, yes. Green bypasses primary, but only while R4 has enough power." The hand crank had already slowed. Jonah began turning it again. Claire connected the memory card reader to the cabinet's maintenance port. A progress bar appeared on the small monochrome screen. "Transfer preparing." Outside, an engine sounded through the storm. Sable rose and moved between the door and the cabinet. Jonah looked through a crack in the shutter. Blue emergency lights flashed among the trees. Micah's tracked vehicle stopped outside. 3 cooperative rescuers climbed down. Micah came last. He approached the cabin without a weapon, his hands visible snow collecting on his jacket. "Jonah," he called through the door. "The slope below has released. We need to evacuate." Jonah checked the relay screen. "Transfer. 4%, Claire whispered. "Is he telling the truth?" A deep rumble moved through the mountain. Dust fell from the cabin rafters. Jonah looked at Sable, at Eli's recorder, and at the Green Network beginning to carry 6 years of truth toward the county. Then Micah called again. "If you transmit that archive without context, you will destroy the only barrier keeping this valley out of a developer's hands." Jonah opened the inner door, but kept the storm bar across the frame. Micah stood 10 feet away. "You altered rescue data," Jonah said. "I controlled access. You sent Team 3 onto the western shelf." Micah's face changed. "That packet was not meant to clear the shelf. It was meant to move the county plow route." Eli saw the fracture. "I tried to correct it. After 7 seconds. Micah looked past Jonah and saw the recorder in Sable's reach. His composure broke for the first time. "You played it. All of it." Micah closed his eyes. The mountain rumbled again, closer. Inside, the transfer reached 9%. Micah opened his eyes and spoke without polish. "Then you know Dad went out because you ordered him to stay. And you know he went out because you changed the route." Both statements stood between them. Neither canceled the other. Micah looked toward Sable. "If that archive goes public, the county dissolves the cooperative. The resort consortium buys every failing ranch by spring. Rescue coverage disappears with the funding. People will die on this mountain for a truth you released without understanding what follows. Jonah gripped the crank. What follows belongs to the people paying the price. Micah stepped closer. That sounds noble when the price is someone else's land. A sharp electronic tone came from the relay cabinet. Transfer interrupted. The screen went dark. Outside, every cooperative beacon in the valley began transmitting at once. 7 seconds late, every beacon in Grayson Valley transmitted the same false emergency. Level 5, avalanche danger, immediate evacuation. All access routes closed. The warning repeated through Micah's radio, the cabin receiver, and the old green cabinet in a chorus of delayed electronic voices. 7 seconds separated the raw sensor pulse from the public command. Jonah watched the sequence on the relay screen. For the first time, the delay was not hidden. Micah heard it too. His face tightened. That wasn't me, he said. Jonah kept one hand on the storm bar. Your certificate is signing it. I revoked that channel 2 years ago. Apparently not. One of the technicians beside the tracked vehicle shouted over the wind. Director Primary says the Western Bowl released. Claire looked toward Jonah. It did release. Partially, Micah said. This warning is valley-wide. Somebody triggered the automatic containment protocol. Somebody, Jonah asked. Micah's eyes went to the relay cabinet. When the Green Network attempted an unauthorized archive transfer, Primary interpreted it as a system breach. You built an alarm that closes every road when evidence leaves the building. I built an alarm that protects rescue communications from sabotage. Same door. Different sign. The cabin shook under another distant slide. Sable stood between Jonah and the doorway carried on 3 legs. The thin fur along her spine had lifted. She was watching the technicians, not Micah. One of them reached for the latch on the outer equipment box attached to the cabin wall. Sable barked once. The man stopped. What's in there? Jonah asked. Micah did not answer. The technician looked toward him. That was enough. Jonah lifted the storm bar and opened the door before Micah could object. Wind drove snow into the cabin. He stepped outside, keeping his body between Sable and the cooperative team. Open the box, he said. Micah moved closer. We need the repeater to restore the network. Open it. The technician used a key. Inside sat a modern control module wired into the old relay line. A red indicator flashed beside the label, Fail-Safe Override. Jonah leaned close enough to read the certificate ID. G-MET. Micah's administrative signature. You didn't revoke it, Jonah said. I moved it off primary operations. You left it attached to the Green Network. As a containment measure. A measure only your credentials can activate. Micah looked at the red light. Someone used a stored key. Who has access? My systems manager. County Emergency Administration. 2 board officers. And you. Yes, the admission came without defense. Claire stepped into the doorway. Can you shut it down? Micah opened the control panel and entered a code. Access denied. He tried a second code. The module displayed Remote Priority Lock. Micah swore under his breath. Jonah studied the wiring. Rachel. Micah looked at him. Rachel Mott manages the acquisition trusts. Your attorney controls the companies buying the land. She established conservation entities because public funding moved too slowly. Does she control this system? She has emergency legal access to preserve records during an incident. Jonah almost laughed. Preserve them by locking everyone out. Micah pulled his phone from his jacket. No service. The technician tried the vehicle satellite unit. Its display showed a blocked uplink. The Level 5 warning had activated automatic bandwidth priority, reserving the satellite channel for primary command packets. The same system that closed the roads prevented anyone outside approved control from challenging the closure. Micah looked older in that moment. What did you give her? Jonah asked. Authority to prevent the cooperative from being dismantled during a legal attack. You gave a property attorney control of a rescue network. I gave the organization a way to survive people who wanted its land. People like May. No, Micah's voice rose for the first time. People like Summit Crown. They offered the county $40 million for the Western Basin. Hotels, private lifts, gated roads, helicopter tours. They would have bought the ranches one by one and turned the cooperative into a contracted security service. So you bought them first. I moved them into protected ownership. Without telling the owners who was behind the offer, they were paid. After your warnings destroyed the value, Micah turned away toward the White Valley. I told myself temporary pressure was better than permanent loss. Jonah heard Eli's recorder in the sentence. He believes he's saving the ground by taking choice away from the people standing on it. You knew, Jonah said. Every step. I knew the purpose. You knew the method. I did not authorize false clear routes. But you kept using the same system after it killed your father. Micah flinched. The technicians looked down. The mountain released a deeper sound, not close enough to strike them, but strong enough to move the air. A powder cloud appeared through the trees below and rolled across the official western route. Claire grabbed the doorframe. We need to leave, she said. Micah pointed toward the tracked vehicle. There's room. Sable backed into the cabin. She would not approach the cooperative machine. Jonah saw the panic return to her shoulders. No, he said. The lower green trail may be cut. We don't move her in that vehicle. Micah stared at him. This is not the moment to make decisions based on a dog's fear. It's exactly the moment. Claire lifted her medical pack. We take the green trail on foot. Your shoulder is injured, Micah said to Jonah. Her leg is injured. Claire is carrying medical gear. You won't beat the storm. Jonah looked at the red override module. We don't need to beat it. We need to reopen one route. He returned to the cabinet and studied the old wiring diagram taped beneath the crank. The green network sent raw packets before primary replacement. The county archive line listened during a narrow handshake window. 7 seconds later, primary took control and overwrote the channel. 7 seconds. Enough time for a sensor packet. Not enough for a large archive. Unless the archive could be disguised as thousands of sensor packets. Jonah removed the memory card and connected it to the offline reader. Claire understood first. Split the files into packet-sized blocks. Micah came inside. The archive will take hours. Not if every relay repeats it. The green relays are decommissioned. 3 are still answering. Primary will overwrite each packet. After 7 seconds, Jonah opened Eli's field program on the card. A crude packet utility appeared, written in old code with comments only Eli would have found amusing. If you are reading this, the fancy system failed. Below it, another line. Green goes first. Jonah felt his throat tighten, but there was no time to remain inside the feeling. He set the program to divide the archive into weather-sized blocks, each with a sequence number and checksum. The cabinet could push 1 block during every handshake. 3 relays could repeat them down the valley. Micah watched the screen. The county system won't know how to rebuild it. Marin will. She's locked out. She knows Eli's packet format. How Jonah inserted the encrypted drive Marin had prepared. Because I sent her the green map last night. The first packet queued. The hand generator required continuous power. Jonah gripped the crank with his right hand. His left shoulder could not help. Micah stepped toward it. Jonah blocked him. You expect me to let you destroy what my father built? Micah asked. Your father built this bypass because he knew someone might need to challenge the primary system. He built it before the cooperative became responsible for the valley. He built it because responsibility without review becomes ownership. Micah looked at Sable. The dog stood beside the recorder, breathing hard. Dad trusted her more than he trusted me at the end, Micah said. Jonah turned the crank. He trusted you enough to confront you before he went public. That was not trust. It was pity. You don't know that. I was there. The first handshake tone sounded. Jonah triggered the packet. The cabinet transmitted. 1 second. 2, 3. At 7, primary replaced it with the level 5 warning. The screen showed green packet acknowledged. 1 block had escaped. Jonah cued the next. Outside, the tracked vehicle's engine revved. One of the technicians shouted that the lower route had lost a bridge marker. The other began loading gear. Micah stood beside the crank. You cannot send the archive before the bowl releases, he said. Then help. Micah stared at him. Jonah continued turning with 1 arm. Pain spread from the shoulder into his neck. Help send the evidence that ends your control, Micah said. Help send your father's record. The second packet went. Then the third. Micah did not move. At 12 packets, Jonah's hand slipped. The crank snapped backward and struck his wrist. Power dropped. The screen went dark. Temporary failure arrived without dignity. No dramatic explosion. An injured arm, an old machine, and a body that could no longer force the mountain to wait. Jonah tried again. His fingers would not close properly. Claire took the crank. "You manage the packets," she said. The handle resisted her. She leaned her weight into it. Sable moved toward Claire and stood close to her leg, watching the door. Micah looked from the dog to the failing screen. The cabinet voltage climbed too slowly. He removed his gloves. "Move," he said. Claire stepped aside. Micah took the crank with both hands and turned. The green light returned. Jonah cued another block. Neither man spoke. For 20 minutes, Micah powered the system he had tried to contain while Jonah transmitted the evidence that could remove him. Claire monitored Sable and the storm. The technicians secured the cabin and kept the tracked vehicle from sliding on the loaded slope. Packet after packet escaped in the 7-second window. 30%. 42. 58. The red override module outside began clicking. Rachel's remote lock was trying to cycle the cabin power. Micah heard it. "She'll burn the repeater." "How long?" "Minutes." Jonah increased the packet size. Some blocks failed checksums and had to be resent. 71%. A sharp crack sounded above the cabin. Claire looked up. Tree A pine fell against the relay mast. The cabin shook. The transmission stopped. The screen displayed "Link lost." Micah released the crank. "That's it." Sable barked and moved to the rear wall. She scratched once at a low-maintenance panel. Jonah remembered the green line entering there. He opened the panel. A secondary cable ran underground toward the old Mercer-cut beacon, the same beacon where he had found Sable. "The mast isn't the only antenna," he said. Micah crouched beside him. "The upper beacon can repeat if its mechanical trigger is active." The case activated it. Sable had not merely guarded evidence. She had returned the telemetry housing to the beacon that completed Eli's bypass. Jonah connected the underground line. Signal returned, weak but stable. 83%. The override module outside sparked. Smoke rose from its housing. 9th. Micah turned the crank faster. His face had gone gray with effort. "Why?" Jonah asked. Micah did not pretend not to understand. "Because Dad's record should survive me." 97. The cabin filled with the smell of hot insulation. The screen flickered. Transfer complete. A confirmation code printed on the paper strip. County Archive received green sequence verified. Micah stopped cranking. For 1 second, nobody moved. Then the red override module burned through its last connection. The level 5 warning cut off mid-sentence. The cabin receiver reset. A new voice came through live and undelayed. "R4. This is county emergency. Green archive received. Western shelf closure confirmed. Lower green route remains open under field guidance. Hold position for escort." Claire let out a breath. Jonah looked at Micah. His nephew sat on the floor beside the crank, hands black with grease. "You understand this ends your directorship," Jonah said. Micah nodded. "And the land trusts. If Rachel hasn't moved them already, you'll testify." Micah looked toward Sable. Yes, the answer did not make him innocent. It made the next step possible. Sable crossed the cabin slowly. She stopped between the two men. Micah held out a hand. She smelled it, then turned away and placed Eli's whistle at Jonah's boot. Not revenge, not judgment, a choice. Jonah picked up the whistle and closed his fingers around it. Outside, the whiteout began to thin. The county escort reached relay cabin R4 after sunset, when the storm had weakened enough to reveal the trees again. 2 snow teams climbed the green route under May Holloway's guidance. They brought a rescue sled for Sable medical supplies for Jonah's shoulder and a printed preservation order signed 43 minutes after the archive reached the county server. Sable refused the sled while Micah stood near it. Jonah did not persuade her. He removed the telemetry case, placed it inside the sled, and stepped back. Sable watched him, then climbed in beside the metal housing. Claire secured a blanket around her without fastening the restraint across her chest. The choice mattered. They descended under headlamps. Micah walked behind the sled with his hands visible and no cooperative insignia on his jacket. County emergency officers had removed his radio access card and command authority before leaving the cabin. No one handcuffed him. He had not tried to run. Halfway down, they passed the fracture line on the western shelf. The slide had crossed the official route exactly where Jonah had forced Sable to walk that morning. He stopped long enough to look. Claire touched his good arm. "Keep moving." Jonah followed the green markers into the valley. The hearing took place 9 days later in the Grayson County Assembly Room. By then, the storm had passed. May's default had been frozen by court order, and newspapers from Denver had discovered that a mountain rescue cooperative could make a useful headline when its director controlled both avalanche warnings and conservation land purchases. Cameras waited outside. Jonah entered through the side door. He wore a charcoal suit that fit across the shoulders but pulled slightly where his arm remained in a sling. The cracked watch stayed beneath his cuff. He had reset it that morning. It had lost 7 minutes by the time he reached the county building. For once he left it that way, without checking again. Maren Cole met him in the corridor. Her black hair was tucked behind one ear, and a thick folder rested under her arm. "Federal Rescue Review called," she said. "I know. They've suspended your advisory contract. I know. They offered to reconsider if your testimony limits itself to the network evidence and omits your operational decision from 6 years ago." Jonah looked through the open chamber doors. The room was already filling with ranchers, rescue volunteers, county staff, and families whose lives the cooperative had saved. No. Maren studied him. "That answer cost you more than pride." "It should. Be careful with that sentence. Paying a price is not the same as solving a problem." Jonah nodded. "I'm testifying because the record is incomplete without it. Not because losing the contract makes me clean." Maren's expression softened by 1 degree. "Better." Sable was not in the assembly room. Claire had insisted she remain at Jonah's cabin, where May sat beside the stove with strict instructions to call if the dog attempted anything more athletic than crossing the rug. Harsh fluorescent light replaced mountain weather inside the hearing chamber. A county review officer sat at the center table with representatives from emergency management, animal welfare, land records, and the state rescue board. Micah sat opposite Jonah with Rachel Mott and another attorney. Rachel looked polished, rested, and entirely unsurprised by the accusations. Micah looked as if he had slept little. He wore a plain gray sweater instead of the cooperative jacket. The hearing began with the archive. A county analyst explained the 7-second packet hold replacement commands and certificate chain. Every altered warning carried a stored key associated with Micah's administrative account. The emergency override that locked the valley during the R4 transmission had been activated from Rachel's legal office in Denver. Rachel's attorney objected that she believed she was preserving system integrity during sabotage. Maren asked whether system integrity included preventing a court-ordered archive transfer. The room grew quiet. Next came the property records. North Range Holdings and the other conservation companies led back through trusts, management agreements, and legal retainers to a nonprofit land entity controlled by the cooperative board. Sellers had not been informed of that connection. Risk assessments used to reduce property values came from the same network Micah administered. May testified before lunch. She did not cry. She placed the accelerated default letter on the table and explained what losing operating credit meant in practical terms. No hay delivery, no veterinary account, no fuel contract. 40 horses moved or sold before winter ended. "Were you offered fair market value?" the review officer asked. "I was offered the value left after they closed my road." Micah looked down. Claire testified after May. She described Sable's duplicate microchip entries, the false death declaration, and the older injury that suggested years of work after the dog should have been retired. "Was Sable physically abused?" a board member asked. Claire considered the question. "Not in the way people prefer abuse to look," she said. "She was fed. She received medical treatment. People praised her. They also kept defining her value by what she could do for them after she had stopped choosing the work." The sentence moved through the room more slowly than an accusation. Several cooperative volunteers stared at their hands. A retired firefighter stood during public comment and said Sable had slept beside him for 3 nights after a building collapse left him unable to close his eyes. He did not defend the records. "She helped me," he said. I think that's why I didn't want to ask what helping me cost her. Another veteran spoke. Then a widow. Then a former handler. The good the cooperative had done was real. No one erased it. That made the accounting harder and more honest. Micah testified in the afternoon. Rachel advised him not to answer questions regarding the land trusts. He answered anyway. He described the first offer from Summit Crown Resorts, the county's refusal to fund a conservation purchase, and the fear that wealthy buyers would divide the valley into private corridors. He admitted raising closure levels to depress development interest. At first he said he intended to purchase only abandoned parcels and resell them to a public trust when funding arrived. Funding did not arrive. The system continued. Why conceal the cooperative's involvement from landowners? Marin asked. Because they would not have sold. Then they did not consent. No, why alter clear route readings? Micah's face tightened. I did not intentionally clear the western shelf the night my father disappeared. Who did? I entered a correction intended for the county plow corridor. The routing table was wrong. The packet applied to Team 3's access line. Did you report that error? No. Why? Micah looked across the room at Jonah. Because Jonah had already testified that my father's coordinates were unreliable, the valley accepted that explanation. I told myself reopening the case would destroy the cooperative before it had a chance to become what Dad wanted. Marin let the answer remain without rescuing him from it. What did your father want? She asked. Micah's voice lowered. A rescue system people could trust. And what did you build? Micah looked at the evidence folders, the property maps, and the rescue volunteers behind him. A system that trusted itself more than the people it served. Rachel closed her eyes. The review officer called Jonah last. He carried Eli's recorder to the witness table. The room seemed to narrow around the small object. Jonah described the call 6 years earlier. He did not begin with Micah's altered packets. He began with his own voice. I ordered my brother to hold position because I believed the screen over the man who was looking at the slope, he said. I had reasons. He had changed coordinates. He was exhausted. Procedure required verification. Those facts are true. He looked toward Micah. Another fact is that my reputation made the county stop asking questions after he died. I allowed the report to close around the version that protected my judgment. The federal representative at the side table stopped writing. Jonah continued. I did not know the packets were being replaced. I could not have known everything, but I knew Eli had tried to tell me something, and I chose not to reopen the record because I was afraid the answer would make my decision harder to live with. He pressed play. Eli's voice filled the assembly room. He believes he's saving the ground by taking choice away from the people standing on it. Then Jonah's recorded order. Hold the cabin, Eli. Then Eli again. Don't waste what's left of your life trying to suffer enough to make me alive. Tell the truth. All of it. The recording ended. No one moved for several seconds. Jonah placed the device on the table. Sable did not lead me to proof that I was innocent, he said. She led me to a complete record. Those are not the same thing. The board issued temporary findings before evening. Micah was removed from operational control and referred for criminal investigation involving wire fraud, coercive property acquisition, falsification of public safety data, and obstruction of records. Rachel's emergency access was revoked, and the land trusts were frozen pending review. The county placed Grayson Valley Search under an independent receiver rather than dissolving it, preserving active rescue coverage while removing the people who had controlled the altered network. May's loan transfer was suspended. Every sale tied to cooperative risk assessments would receive independent review. The decision did not restore lost winters or return every ranch. Some former owners had moved. Some money had been spent. Some families would accept settlements instead of coming home. There was no clean repair for a valley changed by years of managed fear. Outside the hearing room, reporters gathered near the main doors. May stood among the ranchers holding the court order that kept her feed account open. Cooperative volunteers surrounded Claire, asking how to create a retirement policy for working dogs. The retired firefighter who had spoken about Sable embraced another veteran near the steps. It was the best scene of the day. Jonah watched it from the side corridor. He did not enter the center of it. Marin joined him. You could go out there. They don't need me in the photograph. No, but hiding and stepping aside are not always the same. Jonah considered that. Then May saw him through the glass and raised the court order once. Not a salute. Not gratitude. A simple acknowledgement between people who had both kept something standing. Jonah raised one hand. That was enough. Micah came down the corridor under supervision before leaving through another door. He stopped near Jonah. For a moment neither spoke. Micah looked toward the crowded steps. They'll hate me. Some will. Do you? Jonah thought of Eli, the western shelf, the changed packets, and Micah turning the crank at R4. I don't know you well enough anymore to make hatred useful. Micah gave a tired laugh without humor. That sounds like Dad. He stole it from May. The old family resemblance passed between them and hurt in a quieter way. Micah looked at Jonah's sling. How is Sable? Alive. Will she work again? No, Micah closed his eyes briefly. Good, he said. Then he left. By late March, Grayson Valley Search still answered emergencies. The new receiver separated rescue operations from land policy, published raw relay data, and installed an outside review board that included ranchers, veterinary staff, and former handlers. People complained about the meetings. That was one sign the system belonged to more than one person. Claire created a retirement agreement for working dogs. It required medical independence, public placement records, and an evaluation based not only on what a dog could perform, but on what situations the dog voluntarily entered or refused. The first dog enrolled was Sable. Her injured ligament healed as much as it was going to. She walked with a limp after long distances and no longer climbed steep ground. The cooperative offered to fund a specialized rehabilitation home. Jonah brought her to visit it. The property was good. Warm floors, fenced meadow, experienced handlers, other retired dogs sleeping in sunlight. No hidden cruelty waited behind the clean walls. Claire crouched beside Sable near the entrance. You can leave her here for the afternoon. See how she settles. Jonah removed the leash. Sable explored. The room smelled 2 sleeping Labradors, drank from a wide bowl, and accepted a piece of cheese from the handler. Then she walked back to Jonah and sat on his boot. The handler smiled. That seems clear. Jonah looked down at her. You sure? Sable picked up his dropped glove and carried it to the door. Enough trust for today. He took her home. The cabin changed slowly around them. A second water bowl appeared near the stove. Then a low bed. Then a basket for gloves because Sable had decided anything left on the floor required relocation. Jonah began walking the lower green trail each morning, never farther than her leg allowed. He did not regain the federal advisory contract. The review panel thanked him for his disclosure and concluded that his decision 6 years earlier, while understandable under the information available, had been followed by an unacceptable failure to pursue contradictory evidence. The wording was fair. He framed neither the letter nor Eli's exoneration notice. Both went into the same drawer because Jonah no longer needed one document to punish him and another to release him. May kept her ranch. Not every horse stayed. She sold 6 to reduce debt. She called that survival, not victory. In April, she reopened the lower green trail under a public easement and refused to let the county name it after any Mercer. Too many of you already on the maps, she said. Claire visited on Sundays, usually with medication she claimed needed checking, and food Jonah had not requested. Marin came less often, but when she did, she brought legal updates and threw Sable a tennis ball exactly twice because the dog lost interest after the second return. Jonah began repairing the old relay cabin with county permission. Not as a memorial and not as a private refuge, it became an open archive station where raw snow data could be checked against the main network. Eli's green system remained visible behind glass gears and paper tape included, so no one could pretend. Safety depended on machinery. Ordinary people were not allowed to understand. On the first clear morning after the repair, the county tested every beacon in the valley. Jonah sat on the cabin porch with Sable beside the stove inside. Sunlight crossed the snow in long gold bands. The official signal sounded from the receiver. On time. Sable lifted her head. For 6 years that sound had meant work, command another person's emergency, another demand placed on a body trained to answer. Jonah waited. She did not rise. Instead, Sable walked to the doorway, picked up the old glove he had left beside his chair, and placed it across his boot. Then she lowered herself in the sunlight, resting her gray muzzle against his knee. Jonah set Eli's whistle on the porch rail. He did not blow it. Below them, the valley carried on without asking Sable to save it. Jonah spent years believing that love had to look like action, a command given in time, a life pulled from danger, a wrong punished hard enough to balance the past. Sable taught him something quieter. On the morning the valley's beacons finally sounded on time, she heard the call and chose to remain in the sunlight. Jonah let hair. Sometimes the most faithful promise is not to hold tighter, but to leave room for another life to choose its own place beside us. Wherever you are listening from, may the people and animals who have carried too much find that kind of rest, and may we be wise enough not to call their freedom a debt.